Welcome back to Reading Bear. Today, we will take a look at some new malicious compliance stories. And if you enjoyed my content, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel and post some bear emojis in the comments. Let's go!
First one is titled, "You can't continue working from home because you go idle in chat too often." As part of the plan to return to office post-COVID, my company has done a lot of redesignating of who can permanently work from home, who can hybrid, etc. I really wanted to work from home full-time. I hate the office with a burning passion. It's distracting, it's a long commute, there's no benefit to being there, so on and so forth. I'd just rather be at home. Well, when we thought May was going to be go back to office time, they started giving out the new designations. I got designated as in office full-time. It made no sense to me. I work on a team of 8 people and each of us is in a different office somewhere in the country. I've literally never been to an in-person meeting or needed to do in-person work in 3 years at this company. Every single other person on my team got designated to work from home. So I brought it up with my boss and asked to work from home. When I started at this company and lived elsewhere, I got to work from home for 4 months before I moved, and the past 14 months during COVID have been at home. So 18/36 of a month at the company have been working from home. What I was told is that I go idle too often in chat to trust to work from home. Basically, we have a company-wide IM system that shows you as available, idle, or in a meeting. If you don't touch your keyboard for 5 minutes, you show as idle. So they've decided to use this as a measure for who is working and who isn't. The thing is, like many people in many types of jobs, I don't have crap to do for a full 8 hours every single day. The amount of work I have to do on a typical day takes 3 to 5 hours of actual attention. There simply isn't something to do all the time. My performance numbers actually went up working from home. By all objective KPI numbers, I'm a better worker at home. In fact, in the KPIs that I don't flat out lead the team in, I come in second. There isn't work to do that I'm neglecting or procrastinating. When something comes up, I simply do it until it's done or until I can't do anymore due to waiting on someone else, then stop. And I've done that method long enough that my work queue stays empty because I work to get my queue down to the point where when something comes up, I can immediately address it and be done with it. But because I have other ways to spend my time in downtime instead of messing around online at my cube pretending to be working, meaning I show idle more often, I'm a worse worker apparently. I was told if it weren't for that they would let me work at home. So I wrote a 6-line PowerShell script that virtually inputs the period key every 4 minutes that starts running every day at 8 AM and stops at 5 PM. So now I literally never go idle. I do the same amount of work and still read books, watch TV, and play video games on the side. But I have a shiny green check next to my name all day. Because of COVID complications, they eventually said no going back until after Labor Day. I just had a meeting with my boss and he said over this time they've noticed I go idle a lot less than I used to, so they're changing my designation to work from home, all because of a little icon in some software. This concludes my TED Talk on why low to middle level managers are the dumbest, most useless do-nothing positions in all of corporate America. Edit. To all the people commenting that I'm a shitty employee and obviously trying to insult me over it, I wish I could make you feel just how little I care. To all the people implying a workday isn't valid if you aren't at 100% capacity from 8 to 5, keep it up, you truly are an ideal employee, to them. Enjoy the taste of leather, bootlickers. Next one is titled, "Men can't wear shorts but skirts are okay? Sure, I'll go home and change." This happened to my brother about 30 years ago and he recently reminded me about it and said I could entertain strangers for possible imaginary points with it. He was working at a facility that made large waste separation machines for recycling. He worked in the electrical controls department, which was open to the main factory floor but away from the assembly area. He never left the electrical bench as all he did was build control panels while others installed them. In 2 years he never went on the floor to work on the machines. There were areas with lots of welding going on, but even these were segregated to one side due to ventilation requirements. The factory floor was not climate controlled and the first 2-year shorts were okay as long as you didn't go in the welding area. Then someone got burned and the shorts rule got changed, but skirts were still okay. As you can guess, my brother, and others, wore some shorts after the change, mostly because as far as he knew the rule hadn't been enforced. Then the day came when the owner turned on the enforcement and decided to call my brother out on it first. The gist of a 30-year-old conversation from memory went something like this. Owner, you need to go home and change. Bro, I'm not the only one wearing shorts. Owner, I'll be sending everyone wearing them home to change. Bro, are the women on the floor wearing skirts going to have to change? Owner, no, skirts are okay. Bro, okie dokie, be back in an hour. Not long before this, our grandmother decided to get really into genealogy. Like go to libraries and courthouses and graveyards for pencil rubbings into. She had traced us back to the Scottish Highlands, and after finding this out, my brother did exactly what Kirk Lazarus later warned against doing and went a little nuts, self-admittedly now, immersing himself in our newly discovered heritage. So my brother shows back up to work proudly wearing his walking kilt. The next week there was yet another rule added and enforced, and my brother was not very well liked among the female employees after that. Next one is titled, Instead of paying me to do the work other staff aren't doing, you want to pay us all extra to make them watch me do it? I work at an after-school tuition center for children as a senior tutor and supervisor. One tutor will be assigned to numerous kids, overseeing them completing tuition programs on the center computer software and making sure they're on track. Usually there will be a couple of groups of children and their assigned tutor. My role is to drift around and supervise. I take children for individualized one-on-one tuition periodically throughout the term to help them overcome any recurring difficulties. Most of the tutors are newer hires that have been there within a year or two, whereas I have been there for 4+ years while I complete my tertiary study. The shifts are quite short, and as the computer software tends to occupy the kids for a good portion of the lesson, tutors tend to relax and chat a lot more than they should. Over the past year or so I have noticed many tasks being completed to a poor standard, or not completed at all. These include really basic but important things like dating written work, sticking in worksheets, and ensuring the individual goals of each student are being met. Over the course of a term, this is incredibly frustrating as it results in me having to pick up the slack and do rudimentary tasks like this instead of utilizing my time as a supervisor and benefiting the kids. Despite all my consistent reminders, the staff are young and not particularly bothered, so it never ends up being done. This massively detriments the students. Their work is poorly marked with little or no feedback, which results in the students making the same mistakes continuously throughout the term. It also results in worksheets being lost or the same tasks mistakenly being given twice. Recently, I asked management if I could come in an hour early, before tuition starts, to do the rudimentary tasks and make lesson plans for the other tutors so that the lessons would run more smoothly and I could avoid the annoyance of having to fix these problems in valuable tuition time. This worked incredibly well for me because it meant I got paid the same amount to do administrative type work, which I actually find to be more relaxing, and I feel less burnt out and frustrated at my coworkers. The owner reached out to my management and asked why I was being brought in earlier. She then requested that, seeing as I am one of the longest-term employees with the most in-center experience, I instead use this time to train the other staff what I am doing so they are better equipped when I leave after I graduate. Despite being very annoyed that my low-stress individual administrative hour would now be a staff training hour, I complied. Now, one or two of the other tutors have to come in earlier to sit and listen to me explain how to glue a sheet into a workbook and put a date on a piece of paper for an entire hour. Next one is titled, We're Paying, We Know What We Want, Just Do It. A moon and a half ago I worked in a niche IT sector that mainly dealt with law firms because they're crazy in how they operate. So one day the non-technical company owner who dealt with the sales asked me to come on a client meeting with her, to the law firm that Queen uses. Fancy. This wasn't unusual that I'd be asked to go along to a meeting like this, It cuts out a lot of back and forth and gets to the moment where the customer agrees to pay us a lot quicker. They would range from being the knowledgeable guy in the room that's going to make everyone's life better to the 7 red line sketch. The only thing that made this one significant was that it was the Queen's lawyers. The boss wanted to check I was okay with the pressure of this, and should she ask the technical company owner to go instead. I guess she was nervous about losing the opportunity of having the Queen's law firm on our list of clients. I didn't see what the fuss was, and said sure, I'll go. I head into town and meet the boss for the meeting. We meet with the head of IT, a power user, and a partner. Now, there's 2 things to explain in that. 1. Is that a power user is someone like a secretary, they have a job that isn't in IT, who is really quite tech savvy and knows the systems really well. They will usually train up the new people, and field simpler issues to save calls to IT, and they'll have permissions to do a few more advanced things because they can be trusted. So they have a good knowledge of the job and of the IT. I guess now that would almost be a product owner. 2. Is that for a partner to be in any IT meeting is odd. It's normally way beneath them, but I guess this problem was getting under people's skin for a while and had crept up the ladder. This particular lawyer was there because he was the technical partner or something. I think he basically explained what IT were talking about in partner meetings. So we get into their problems and they tell us all the drama they've had with competitor corp. They had this at first and it caused this issue. So they changed it to this and it fixed that, but then this happened. Then when they fixed that we had the first issue again and a new one. Now we've got this and it's the best, but we still have this issue. I sat there nodding along, asking a question here and there, looking briefly at their examples. I knew what the issues were going to be from the change before they even told me. It was a case of them wanting it all. What ensued next was an hour-long conversation about what they wanted, and all the issues I could see with each of their ideas. We talked back and forth and they got more and more frustrated with me because they couldn't get to a point where I would say, oh yeah, that'll be fine. There was always some compromise. The problems were the ones they couldn't understand the implications of. There's only so far you can push it though, and they were getting firmer and firmer on, we know what we want. I said fine, I'll document the requirements and include any issues I see with what they want. There was a bit of resistance to the wasting of time when they wanted this done yesterday, but this is normal and my boss backed me up that we needed to agree on the work before we begin. I'm a developer, so I hate documentation. I've never met one that doesn't. But this document was not that bad to write. It was an 8-page I told you so. When I was done, I gave it to my boss. I got so many, are you sure? And, you can back this up? Questions, but I was sure, so we sent it in and met them again then next day. The mood this time was different. They were a bit shell-shocked. The area we worked in was niche, but my knowledge was super niche. I knew the most absurd things about the system and how it would react, and I put some real doomsday stuff in there. Scenarios that if they happened would render a well-used legal document useless and very difficult to recover. The documents that's the most likely to happen on would be the most important ones, so they were appalled by the future they were looking at. Several times they said, we can't have this. After 15 minutes or so of this they opened the door. What would you do? I laid out what I would do and there were smiles and nods all around and I basically told them to drop what they wanted and said they needed from the first time we met them. We left the meeting to smiles and handshakes. My boss gave me a good attaboy for handling this pressured situation so well. I didn't actually feel any more pressure than any other meeting. I knew my stuff, and the computers weren't going to behave any better for them because of their other clients. My favorite part of this is that we then went ahead and got paid to build for them was the system that competitor corp first gave them. They were right when they delivered their first solution, but they didn't have the guts to hold their ground, or maybe they didn't know what was coming when they made those changes. I don't work in that industry anymore. It was nice being one of the best in the world at something, but it's like being the best Betamax repairman in the world. Who really cares? Next one is titled, If you're late past 8:30, come in at 9. Okay. This just happened. My workplace starts at 8:30 in the morning. Our Karen supervisor, I'll have a story later about how much of a Karen she is. But this story isn't about her Karen-ness, told us once that if we can't make it by 8:30, then we should come in by 9. Cue my coworker late guy. Late guy is always late. Not late for clock-ins, mind you, just late for entering our office. Today was a Sunday. Both of us had extra work scheduled, counts as overtime, so I came in by 8:27. Late guy clocked in and entered by 8:59. I confronted him, he apologized and said, Karen said to come in by 9 if we're late. You're not supposed to be late, late guy. Edit. Guess I should have said, took a friendly jab, instead. I didn't do anything about his tardiness any more than the fun poking. Hope that clears things up. Last one is titled, Don't You Know Who I Am? Meets Malicious Compliance. This story comes all the way from the late 90s, when I was the chief editor of my high school's literary magazine. I'd been more of an artist all my life, but in senior year, my love for English, editing, and creative writing really blossomed. We paired students' prose and poetry submissions with other students' artwork. After a long year of working on the magazine, it was finally time to take it to the printers. This print shop had worked with our high school for about 20 years. Along with the Lit magazine, they also printed our newspapers, bulk take-home flyers, and I think the yearbooks, too. And the chief printer had excellent advice, but he kind of acted like a know-it-all, and hated to be second-guessed. We were working on captions for the illustrations, e.g., watercolor by Jessica L., oil painting by Suleiman B., etc., when he came across a canvas board painting. He said some kind words about it, and then scribbled a note, acrylic painting, before putting the work on a separate pile. I'm sorry, that's an oil painting, I meekly said. The guy regarded me over his half-moon glasses. Young man, I've been doing this work for 20 years, and that, he jabbed a pencil towards the painting, is an acrylic. It's kinda not, though, I said, but before I could say anything else, he huffed angrily, and set the painting back over to our side of the counter. Go talk to the artist, he said to the club advisor, to double-check that it's an acrylic, and get them to sign off on it, then we'll print it. My advisor, without missing a heartbeat, turned to me, and asked, Hey, is this an acrylic? Nope, I said, and signed the release form he placed in front of her. It's an oil painting. Thanks for listening.